Hello.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm here. I'm back. I didn't fall off the boat. I wasn't pushed off the boat. I wasn't arrested for pushing anybody off of the boat
Well,
because I learned
I'm
how to
glad
do
for
it.
that. But I missed you last week. And I need to know,
Oh,
how
well,
was
I
the
missed
cruise?
it was awesome. It was awesome. Those kind of things, I feel like anybody could find anything to complain about, but I really didn't have anything. I mean, you have to understand kind of the audience, and then you have to understand how much they're doing for a group of people that are stuck on a ship, right?
Right.
And but I had a good time. I've got a couple of stories. One,
I can't wait to
I
hear.
beat a bunch of families by myself, and I won a trivia trophy. So there you go. It's called a ship on a stick, and I won this for animated movies because that's where my
Oh,
knowledge is.
not
I
surprised.
feel like I was just trying to like impress Captain with my random animated movie trivia knowledge. And then so couple things. this is the fun one. So Mrs. Bruce Crime and I both work in canines in one way, shape, or form, right? Nonprofit with canines, me with therapy dogs, her with shelter dogs. And so we, we spent a couple days on the ship. The first stop that we had was oh my gosh, I'm blanking.
You killed some
Grand
brain
Turk.
cells while you were there.
Grand Turk. Right. Yeah. I drank a lot. Was Grand Turk. And we had a great time. We got off the ship, we had our bags, we hung out, we did a little bit of shopping, not as much as we did at Amber Cove. And then we packed up, we were on our way back to the ship, and we got pulled to the side randomly with like 10 other people to have a canine sniff our stuff.
Because you
And
looked
that's fine.
suspicious.
Yes, I was wearing this hat. Obviously, I'm a drug dealer. Actually, maybe it was. I don't know. So we get pulled over to the side, and I'm taking a look, and I'm we got this guy who's like 5'3". God bless him, Mr. Napoleon. And then a much taller woman, both running the canines. So we put our bags on the other side of the rope, and I see these two canines, and I don't pretend to know everything about canines, but I knew these dogs were young. One of them was trying to get the leash unlooped from the front of the fender of the cart that they drive.
Yeah.
So a very young dog.
They were
So anyways, the dog goes down, does its job, and then comes to my bag and just kind of nuzzles it a little bit, just kind of pushing it over. Well, that bag's been at work. That bag's been in various places. I had ginger chews in that bag. And so he kind of pushes it, and I was like, well, he didn't indicate because indicating is sitting.
Right.
He went on, and I said, cool, we're good. And then as we're leaving the line, the female security officer says, all right, come on, step on over here. I don't. So we step over to the side, and I know that in the line of work dogs, you cannot say the dog is wrong. That hurts the ego of the security guy. So I'm like trying to like diagnose like psychology and figure out how to communicate. And he goes, and this is the classic, right? He goes, listen, the dog indicated that something's in the bag. If you have something in the bag and you get rid of it now, not a problem. If you do take it on the ship, then it becomes a problem. I've heard this a million times on Contraband, the TV show. I don't have anything. I literally have nothing whatsoever.
You have doggy smells.
Well, maybe, but I wasn't going to give him an excuse. I was going to just literally perform the task of opening my bag and taking things out. And I said, sir, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open my bag. I'm going to pull things out, and you tell me if there's anything that might have caused the dog to do, indicate. So I'm pulling things out, and he's looking at me, and he, of course, has to have all the confidence in his dog because that's what they have
Right.
to do. You can't have the dog seem like it did the wrong thing, and I get it,
Right.
and probably he's dealing with a bunch of people anyway. So I pull everything out, and there was one last thing in my bag, and he was like, "What's that?" And the female security guard came up, or customs, border patrol, whoever it was, official, and like I started pulling it out, and it's literally a pack of cards in cellophane wrap because it hadn't even been opened. And the the woman looked at the guy and was like, "It's a deck of playing cards," which was so funny. Anyways, we ended up getting on and getting out of that situation, and they still wanted to scan and take pictures of our IDs and stuff, which is whatever. Probably just to prove that they looked through somebody's stuff.
Right.
But when those situations happen, you go through all stages of grief, right? You're like, "Oh my gosh, sad," then angry, and then you start making jokes, and it's so funny how that happens. So that was one of my stories. Um,
Okay, I just wanna
the
know,
the
did you have anything hidden?
No,
No.
no,
You were actually
no.
being a good citizen.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, listen, I had like my swim trunks and stuff in the waterproof pocket, which is not actually waterproof. We all know this, but it was there. Like, I don't know what he smelled, but as far as I know, generally, indicating is sitting down. That dog did not sit. That dog continued on. But I just find it really, really, really funny that that dog decided to mess with two dog people. That's all I'm saying.
It's the hat.
That's all I'm saying.
It's the hat.
I get it. I listen, I got this with the approval of Mrs. Bruce Crime, so it's gotta at least be
You did
passable and
good.
okay.
You did good.
Um, uh, so the very last thing, and I told you this a couple nights ago, but the last night of the last full day of the cruise is the last full day you get like the drink package. Um,
Mhm.
and so where Mrs. Bruce Crime and I are like, okay, we're just gonna kind of take our time. We're not gonna go crazy. We want to get off the ship the next day and not miss the time frame. Other people are very much not like that, and they're like, "We're gonna get all 15 drinks today,
That's right.
for the day." And, there ended up being a show that was called What's Age Got to Do with It? And that was basically, kids say the darndest things. It's kids and their parents on stage. And during this time, some random people on the second floor of the Liquid Lounge, which is where this is going, started fighting. They started having a fight, and there was a very, very, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. She was just that person who wanted to continuously come back, right? It wasn't enough
Mm,
just to make a comment and leave. They had to keep coming
right.
back. So there was that. And that wasn't like the bad thing. The thing that happened was up apparently near the buffet. And at the buffet, apparently there was a fight in which I said this on Monday to you. Like the guy just had to wait 20 seconds and more would have come out. I don't know what the fight was over, but there was a fight. And of course, to write an incident report, you've got to take their IDs and their names and things like
Mhm.
that. Well, when they ran one of the guy's IDs, it came across as he has a warrant out of Houston, Texas. And and so he went to the brig. I assume he went to the brig. I don't know the full story, but we were delayed in debarking our debarkation process by an hour because when we pulled up to port, Norfolk police were there to meet the people on board to then arrest this person on the warrant.
So what was the warrant? Because 'Cause I'm assuming it wasn't just an everyday warrant.
Well, and that's my argument, right? Like, not all of that would have happened for something
Right.
simple,
It had to
but
have been something
there
big.
are groups that everybody joins on Facebook, if you're on the same
Right.
cruise or things like that.
Right.
And this person's mother commented and said, I'm glad my son could have been of entertainment to you all. He was arrested by Norfolk police on a traffic warrant. And all I could think of was they don't do all that for running a red light. So I don't know what he was trafficking, but it,
I know,
it
I was
wasn't
gonna say,
like a simple traffic warrant.
no. Unless
But
the cruise line gets paid for catching people with the warrant and they get money.
I don't know. I don't know. It's funny. We had been talking
Because you'd
about
have
this
thought
in
they
the
would have checked
cruise, and
that
and and
before you
and
let them on the cruise, right?
yeah. Well, yes and no. I guess it kind of depends. Really, when they scan, when you get on the ship, they are checking your passport. So you would have thought they would have picked something up, but they're just checking it. They're not like running it, right? Um,
Oh,
and then when you're getting off and on the boat, they're just scanning your like your cruise ID. And
right,
you do have to have an ID with you to prove that that's your ID, but
right.
they're not really running it again. They didn't run it until there was an issue.
So maybe they
Um,
don't care that you're leaving the US. They only care if you try to come back.
yeah, but then again, Um, they wouldn't have run his passport or his ID by border, I don't think.
Right.
Not for that. They would have just
Yeah.
checked it to make sure it matched and said, "Welcome back." So I think the only reason was because he was in this conflict. It was wild to me. I did find out though that whether if I was within that 12 nautical miles, I would have obviously been prosecuted in the US if something happened. Outside of that, that Carnival cruise ship, Carnival Sunshine, actually flies under the Bahamas flag. So they don't fly under UK or US. They fly
Uh,
under the Bahamian, I think it's Bahamian flag.
Bohemian.
So I would have been prosecuted in the Bahamas, to which I could only be but so angry. So,
Well, I'm glad
anyways,
you had a good time.
I did. It was decent. I was a little surprised at how much there was to do on the ship the whole time. Um, it's amazing what they put together and plan. And I got to meet and hang out with the entertainment that were on board. They were lovely. And then I hung out in the art gallery that was on board and talked and hung out with the art gallery folks of no surprise to anybody. So it was a lot of fun. We had a good time. I'd take my kids probably. They'd be too busy doing other things. We wouldn't have to worry about them.
You wouldn't have to. We did a carnival when the boys were younger for spring break, and they had Camp
Mhm.
Carnival. And it was wonderful because
Yeah.
this was before GPS, but we had those little things so we knew where they were all the time. And I'll never forget, we went by and they were having some kind of Sunday building contest, and my youngest had ice cream stacked up this high. And I was like,
Dude, they had ice cream on either side that was open when the buffet was open, and then they also have an 11:30 to 2 a.m. buffet, and holy
yeah,
crap, I was like, "This is brilliant for the drunk people," and
it
they
is.
know what they're doing. And
They
and
do.
and people will complain about Carnival, and I get it. There's certain things that are worthy of complaining about, but not when I was on my cruise. And my little, like, half, you know yeah, right? I would. I would witness true crime on the cruise, you're right. Um, I keep my eye out for that stuff just for you all. Um, but yeah, I don't know. It was just a good time. It was a good time. We booked this 2 years ago, so it was nice to finally kind of follow through with it, and we'd do it again, for sure.
I love to
So,
cruise, and I love that they have so many things to do because they have so many different personalities, so many different likes. There's literally something for everyone.
yes. And, like, it's interesting because you're coming out of Virginia and talking to one of the actors, dancers. He God bless him, he saw my shirt. Of course, the first night my shirt read "Free Dad Hugs," right, with, like, all the flags and stuff and everything on it, because it's me. And he
It's you.
he he remembered it for the last night when we had, like, a little VIP meet and greet with them. And, but he was like, "I had no idea what to expect coming out of Virginia." And I was like, "Don't worry, neither did I." But it seems like
Yeah,
everybody just kind of put everything on hold,
they
and we
do.
were a culture unto ourselves. And I really hope that folks that just don't think about that are very ethnocentric, I hope they thought about different cultures, because there's South African, there's Indonesian, there's
Mhm.
Filipino, there's all there
Everything.
are like 40 different nationalities on that ship. And
Mhm.
so I really hope that they took some time to think about that and reflect on it. And for all I know, they came off the ship and they threw it away. But at least
Years.
it seems like it is an ecosystem in which you could learn to, get
Right.
along with other people. So,
Well,
um,
I'm
but
glad
yeah,
you had fun, but I'm glad you're back, and I'm glad we're
me
here
too.
tonight, and
Yes.
I wanna know what you're drinking.
What am I drinking? Well, before I say that, can I just we just got to do our typical, like, make sure everybody you like, subscribe, hit that notification
Oh,
bell. Whatever you need to do, please do it. We've got a live show coming up at the Hamilton Pool Vineyard and Farms on May 3rd in Austin. If you have any suggestions for live shows, show locations, you can send them to our producer, Tara at tcwtmedia.com. That would be fantastic. All right. So
See, you did so good. I
being,
was gonna just do it at the end of the show because I was just thinking that's what we did last week when we had the author here, but you're right. Please like and subscribe.
yes. So my wine, I had a really hard time. I was really looking for something, but I was pressed for time because I was getting ready to go on a boat. But I was like, well, I'll go to, I was saving it just in case I needed a fallback. But I ended up going with 19 Crimes,
Mhm.
their red blend.
The red blend, it's
And
good.
it's really good. It's called 19 Crimes Red Blend, Southeastern Australia red wine. It's supposed to be bold and balanced. There is oakness. There is oakiness. And there are it is I mean, I think it's what it says. It's what it says. It's very good.
It is, and
So
it's good.
that's my recommendation. Now, do you want to talk about what you're drinking, or do you want me to talk about kind of my interest in this case?
I can tell you what I'm drinking since I'm sipping on it, and I am not having wine, so everybody just grab your pearls. I decided since we were doing a New Orleans theme, and since it's also Mardi
Mm-hmm.
Gras, that I am actually having a Pat O'Brien Hurricane cocktail. And the recipe is straight from the Pat O'Brien's bar website. And what I love, it says, the recipe says that one sip and you will be transported to the Big Easy's infamous Bourbon Street Piano Lounge. And guys, I'm here for it. And that's why I even have my little beads on. I'm not gonna tell you how I got the beads, but I have my beads on.
She made me take my shirt off. That's how.
Now
All right.
tell me
So
why
if
you
you
picked
haven't been
this
able to
bonkers case.
well, first off, like when we started picking our cases, we were each presenting one, and so this was something that's always interested me. I was made aware of it when I started watching American Horror Story, and the Coven episode or season came up, and so I was kind of taken to that world. But my fascination with the Axemen it's a bit like my love for a good old fashioned family feud. It's messy, intriguing, and utterly captivating. And I mean, who isn't drawn to a serial killer who terrorized the city, leaving a trail of blood and confusion in his wake? It's just kind of something that we it's just part of it, right? It's like the ultimate New
Mhm.
Orleans party crasher minus the jazz and a lot of axe wielding. Um, his MO was unique. It was terrifying. I won't say too much about it because I know you're going to go into that. I mean, let's just say that when he went to somebody's house, he wasn't there to deliver beignets, which I have still yet to have, and I've heard they're good, I
Oh
suppose.
my god. They are
Um,
so yummy.
so like I think one of my not favorite but most interesting parts is that this guy had dramatic flair, and he should have been a Mardi Gras float designer. Truly, like he knew what was up. And what gets me really is the absurdity of it all. The Axeman's victims were mostly Italian grocers, which led to some pretty wild accusations. And it was like dark comedy minus the comedy plus a lot of axe murders. So where else
Mhm.
can you find a serial killer who's part boogeyman, part local legend, and all around fascinating? It's kind of like the city's own twisted fairy tale minus the happily ever after, plus a lot of axe related trauma. And that's by and large why I picked it.
Yeah, well, and I told you this. After you presented this case to us, I mean, I became intrigued. Okay. I truly thought the Axeman story was a folk tale made up by your parents to tell your children so that they would behave. Um, so to find out that it's real was really disturbing to me because I truly thought it was bullshit. So when I started looking into it, I was like, "Oh, wow," because, I mean, I love New Orleans, I love the culture, I love Cajun food. In fact, I just had Cajun food this week when Jeffa was in town, but I also love voodoo, and I
Oh
love
yeah.
that all of that culture comes together, and now I can add axe murderer to it.
Right. And Captain says,
And
and he was an American Horror Story played by Leland Palmer from Twin Peaks, which is iconic, and that is very true.
that is true. But I will say I'm glad this happened in the 1900s and that it wasn't recent. And I'm
Mhm.
also going to say I'm going to still pretend it's all just fake news and enjoy my very strong hurricane.
I think right before we kind of really hop into the case, I want to say thanks to Lady in Gray for her research
Yes.
and her writing on this. Wonderful job. So credit where credit is due. We think that's very important to do. So thank you very much, Lady in Gray, for your hard work on this. So let's briefly talk just a little bit about some general context about New Orleans. So the 1911 African American, we're trying to figure out kind of the Big Easy origin theory in terms of where that
Mhm.
nickname came from. And so the 1911 African American Dance Club, the Big Easy Hall in Gretna, LA, as you can see here, um, that was where legendary cornet player Buddy Bolden performed, solidifying the region as an emerging jazz music city. And so that is something that we that's something that they think is kind of what it came from. They also tend to think that it came from the prohibition restrictions, which were easy, right?
Mm.
And they were held by local law enforcement between 1920 and 1933. Um, New Orleans continued to display active social and nightlife during this time. They enjoyed everything from bathtub gins to the finest wine. So you name it, they had it. It was an easy prohibition. Oh, look at those
Look
fancy,
at him.
fancy fellas. Um, sorry guys, this is what it's become. You worked real hard, and this is it right here. This is what you get.
I know it. It looks
Um,
great.
what?
I said, "You look great. You would fit in. You're just a modern day version."
I'll take it. I think as long as they were good people.
But have you
And
noticed
then finally, hmm,
there's no women in the picture?
no, no, this was the 1920s, which really not that long ago. Also, not an excuse, just context. So, New Yorkers were super busy running around in the Big Apple, but in New Orleans, it was a laid-back lifestyle that reigned, and as a result, the Big Easy was born. So there's a couple explanations for kind of how that came across. I'm sure some of you have heard different ones, and if you have some, you're more than welcome to send them to us or put them down in the comments. We would love to read them. I'm going to pass this along though because the MO is important.
It is, but I have to say, used to have a joke because in Texas, you had to be 21 to drink, but you could just drive across the border into Louisiana to get alcohol at 18. So our joke was, "Hey, the Big Easy, the reason they're the Big Easy is because it's easy to get a drink." We were young,
Oh,
we were
it's not
stupid.
because all the people who went over there were easy.
No, I wasn't easy. I was just cheap. Okay, now we'll get on to his MO.
You'd think we scripted that one. That was not.
So, as you said earlier, this killer primarily seen to target Italian or Sicilian immigrants or grocery store owners. So, even Joseph Romano, who was killed at his home, his nieces ran a small grocery store out of the front room of the house. They didn't
Mhm.
have grocery stores like HEB, Kroger's, Albertson, Vaughn's. They had a little corner, kind of like before a bodega. But what was crazy about this killer is that he would remove the back door panel using a chisel to gain access into the homes. Look at that. He would break that off, and that's just crazy. Now, he was known to attack victims with a straight razor or axes that were owned by the victims. Now, I'm going to just tell you in modern day time, I hear it all the time on shows. Well, it was planned because nobody goes to a house to commit murder and doesn't come with a weapon. Guess what, people? This guy did. So he went without
Yep.
a weapon. Now, The killer stole nothing. There's some back and forth on this, but he really didn't steal anything, and so law enforcement, they wanted to say that robbery wasn't the motive.
Right. And like, I want to say, I don't know what his deal was with grocery stores. I don't know if somebody told him to stop squeezing the Charmin and he didn't like it. But he really had a target for this. And I do think I know who the killer was. I
Who?
think, I think it was Tim the Toolman Taylor with a Binford door scraper with Al Borland, who felt bad enough with the homicide. And when Tim asked, should we take something? He responded, well, I don't know about that, Tim. So I'm going to go with Tim. That was a really long journey to get to a really shitty joke. So here we are.
He uh, Tim the Toolman Taylor is the reason I was scared to have another child because I did not want to have 3 boys like they did. I was scared to death I would get a 3rd one.
You know,
So
I recently started rewatching that to completely go off on a tangent, and watching it with the kids, and they think it's funny. And of course, I'm picking up on things that would not play well now
oh,
at
yeah,
all.
there's a
The
lot of
only saving
shows
grace is that his wife always comes out on top, which is great. So
because she likes to be in that position. Anyway,
I just
so
I didn't
one
think you were gonna do
researcher
it.
I did it, but one researcher and author, you know, wrote about the Axeman, but believes that the Axeman actually was the same person as the Cleaver who started attacks back in 1910. Okay, but there's no conclusive evidence. And some people said maybe it was a copycat.
Yeah, I think it definitely could be. I guess it depends on whether or not that person was paying attention to the 1910 media. Because although media wasn't widespread, international, etc., as much as it is now, um,
Mhm.
like they still talked about this stuff in detail in the papers.
Mhm.
So they really would have had to be in that area at that time and then have a cooling off period. So I don't know. I don't know.
I mean,
Um,
we don't know since we don't know who it is.
right. Because we don't know who it is, you're not gonna find about their life in
Right.
this script. But we are gonna talk about the victims canonically in terms of what happened. And so on May 23rd, 1918, we're going to focus on Joseph and Catherine Maggio. Joseph was an Italian grocer. He and his wife, Catherine, were attacked in their apartment while they slept. Joseph had his throat cut. He was struck in the head and face with an axe, possibly to conceal the cause of death. Joseph initially had survived the attack, but he died minutes after being discovered by his brothers, Jacob, Salvador, and Andrew. Now, Catherine Maggio had her throat cut and was struck in the head and face with the axe, again, possibly to conceal the cause of death. Catherine's cut was so deep that she was nearly decapitated. She appeared to good timing on that trigger. She appeared to have
Yeah.
died quickly. Um, a message was left on the pavement. Mrs. Maggio will sit up tonight just like Mrs. Tony. Now, this was theorized to refer to Italian greengrocers Anthony and Joanna Sciambra, who or probably Sciambra. But you want to say something? I see
No,
it.
I'm just trying to think of how you would say
Oh,
that, Sciambra.
I think it's Sciambra. But they were attacked in 1911. Now, Mrs. Sciambra died in that attack. More is going to be discussed about that case a little bit later. Back to the Maggios, bloody clothes were found in the apartment, which actually led enforcement to believe the killer changed into clean clothes before fleeing. Interesting. A complete search of the premises was not performed after the bodies were removed, which could be caused by inept law enforcement. That's possible. I mean, we also have to realize this was the time period when something happened like this, the entire community like went through the crime scene. They just were like, this looks interesting. Let's walk by as if it was like a college tour. You know, on this side, you find Mrs. Ciambra, and on this side, you find more of
Yeah,
Mrs. Ciambra. So, you know what I'm saying, right? Um,
right.
so there was a bloodstained razor that was found later on a neighbor's lawn. That razor was suspected to belong to Joseph's brother, Andrew, who was a barber. Bum, bum, bum. Now, Andrew's employee, Esteban Torres, which sounds a lot like a Tarantino character, told police that Andrew had taken the razor from the shop 2 days before the murders, saying that he wanted to have a nick honed in the blade. Um, Andrew lived in an adjoining room in the dwelling and reported that he heard groaning noises through the wall the morning after the murders, despite hearing nothing of the actual attack. Um, and to this, you might say, well, case closed. But no. Um, Andrew was extremely intoxicated, and he actually blamed his inability to hear any noises from the attack itself, blamed that on the intoxication. So,
I mean, let's be honest, it's New Orleans, and who also hasn't been so drunk that they passed out and they couldn't hear an attack? I have been so passed out in my younger days. Somebody came into my house, shook me several times, and finally woke me up by pouring cold water on me. So it is possible.
I can't say I've been tested in that fashion, but I could imagine that to be true, and I'd probably be pretty dead to the world anyways. Pun 100% intended. So, Andrew was not permitted to attend the funeral and was instead in a police interrogation room. He wasn't allowed to attend the funeral. It's ridiculous. Andrew became the prime suspect, but he was released after investigators were unsuccessful in getting him to change his statements because they probably were true. Um, Andrew said he went to bed while his brother and sister in law were still alive and awake. He woke up shortly before 5 a.m. He reported that he saw a quote, unknown man allegedly lurking near the apartment prior to the murders. The razor was later found not to be Andrew's. There was a dark stained shirt of Andrew's that turned out to be stained with wine, not blood, like I just did right here in this general vicinity. Um, and Andrew claimed his older brother had raised him. So they had a relationship, a really good one.
Well, and I'm sorry. It is sad that he did not get to go to his brother's funeral because there's something sad with that. I mean, especially if he was raised by his brother. I'm sorry. Let him go to the funeral and then question him afterwards. I
Right.
mean, you already didn't
Absolutely.
cordon off the crime scene. What's it gonna hurt? That's just horrible.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
So, well, now
Mm.
I'm gonna take us into June 27th, 1918. Louise Bissumer and Harriet Lowe. Now, 2 weeks later, John Zanka was the bakery guy, and he was delivering bread to Louis and Harriet. I'm gonna just tell you, I want someone to come to my house and deliver bread every day. Fresh homemade bread. Okay? Anybody
Mhm.
up for that? And if you wanna bring beignets, I will tell you how to get here. But he knocked. Louise answered with his head covered in blood, and John was shocked. I mean, this shit didn't happen back then a lot, right? Now, Louise showed him, excuse me, see, that's why those hurricanes, it just snuck up on me.
It went down the wrong tube.
It did, and now it made me sneeze. See? Let's see if we can get a third one.
Boom.
No, no.
D-
Now, anyway,
no.
Louise showed him where his mistress, Harriet Lowe, lay on top of the bloody sheets. Now, guys, I did say mistress, and I'm going to just say clutch your pearls because that probably was quite the scandal back then.
I'm thinking it was at that point John questioned his career choice. He wanted to drop off a couple of baguettes when he gets Lewis standing there like an extra from Walking Dead, bleeding over the fresh carbs. You never bleed over the fresh carbs. Come on.
You don't. But Luis and Harriet were attacked in his private quarters behind his grocery store during private time. So I had to stop and think about this. Private time, does that mean the store's closed for the night? Or did the store close so that they could go hide the sausage and the baguette or something? I don't know. I just want to know why it was called private time.
Well, didn't have a baguette yet. It hadn't been
Didn't
delivered.
hadn't been
So,
delivered. But
yeah.
the scandal of him having a mistress was larger news than the attempted murders. What does that tell you in today's time? It'd be like, oh, he's got a side piece. Uh-oh.
Like somebody hit them with an axe, but it was a
Yeah,
mistress.
a mistress, that's what matters. But Luis suffered an axe blow above his right temple, resulting in a possible skull fracture. Now, Harriet had permanent paralysis on the left side of her face from the hack over her
God.
left ear. Now, the
Yep.
axe that was used was found in the adjacent bathroom and was owned by Lewis. Once again, didn't bring his own murder weapon, right? Now, sadly, Louis Ubicon, a 41-year-old African American man hired by Luis Bessemer as a store clerk the week before, was arrested almost at once, even though there was no
Of course.
evidence for him being guilty. But guess what? He was eventually released. It's like they
Good.
arrested before they asked questions. But Harriet reported her attacker was a mulatto man. And I'm going to just let everybody know that's the vocabulary they used back then. Okay. But her version was discounted by authorities due to her disorientation. I mean, I have to tell you, somebody hits me in the head with an axe. I'm probably not going to recall too much what I saw. Okay. Now, once again, police here determined that robbery had been the motive, even though nothing had been taken, which I don't know. But Harriet continued to make sordid and fake accusations related to the attacks, as well as the character of her lover. So basically, he probably caught shit from his wife for being with his mistress. When this happened, he dropped her like a hot potato, and there is nothing like a scones woman. So she basically even said that he was a spy. I mean, she literally said he was a German spy, and they arrested him. But
I
he
mean,
was released after 2 days.
Good. I mean, he was obviously a Germanic spy axe murderer with too much time on his hands. That's exactly what we're going for here. I think that fits the profile terribly. That's not any. I just love how the police, like, the first thing were like, robbery wasn't a motive. The second one, obviously the same kind of tool, same kind of weapon, etc., same kind of MO. Oh, robbery was a motive. There's no.
Yeah.
We need a database, but there's no database. It's literally just a guy named Data creating a base.
It is.
So
now, on her deathbed, Harriet then accused her lover of being her attacker. So she went from saying he was a spy to he's the one that attacked me. Now, he was charged with her murder. And after 9 months in prison, 9 months, guys, he was acquitted on May 1st, 1919, after just 10 minutes of deliberation. Now, he was not an Italian immigrant, and he had only lived in the city for several months before the attack, but he did have the grocery store, and he had one pissed off woman.
A lot of that, I feel like, was to detract attention from her and her mistake in order to push it all back on him.
Right.
Right. Now,
I mean, I'm
Do
not
what you
saying she
want.
was
I'm not going to
wrong.
judge anybody.
Yeah,
No, not at all. I mean, in the time and age, though, if you were labeled a quote unquote hussy, then that was it, right?
a
Um,
hussy? Is that what
but
you
yeah,
called her? I thought
that's
they were floozies or
floozy,
harlot.
hussy, harlot works. I'd say a flapper, but my great grandmother was a flapper, so we'll just avoid that. Um,
Yeah, let's
she
not say
was, she
flapper.
was.
Well, then you can't say
Flapper
that
is a real thing.
a scorned or not a oh morally bad person, a flapper. If your grandmother was a flapper, let's just say she was a hoe.
She was.
Let's just say
She'd
it.
rouge under her knees and dance on the tables. That was grandma. Um, so moving from June to moving, yes, right. She wasn't good. Moving from June to August 5th, 1918, Anna Schneider, uh, Anna Schneider was 28 years old and 8 months pregnant. She woke up to a dark figure standing beside her bed. Which is scary. The attacker repeatedly bashed in her face. Her scalp was cut open and her face was covered in blood. Now, her husband, Ed, found her at midnight when he returned home late from work. Now, Ed reported nothing stolen besides $6 or $7 from his wallet. Ed, where did you go without your wallet? But that's not the point. There were no signs of forced entry to the windows or the doors. So to the windows, to the walls. Nobody broke in. Police decided that she had been attacked with a bedside lamp. Now, you all are going to have a question. You're going to have the question, what about the baby? Well, Anna delivered a healthy baby girl 2 days later. Now, she remembered nothing during the attack because, darn. Police soon arrested ex-con James Gleason, but he was later released again, also due to a lack of evidence. So we really do that whole arrest, hold 48 hours, and hopefully we find something to keep them thing. That's kind of where we're at. So this is when lead investigators began to publicly guess the Schneider attack was related to the earlier two, which is interesting because the second attack didn't have the robbery aspect. This attack did, but didn't use an axe, which was a huge connection between the crime scenes when the first and the second attacks did. And oh no, I've gone cross-eyed.
Now, I'm not sold that she was one of the Axeman's victims, and my brain goes to it's always the husband. Did they look into the husband? Did he get arrested for 48 hours?
So I think that there was a lot of tunnel vision on this. They seem to assume when one or two things matched previous crimes from the Axeman that it was the Axeman, and they seemed to stop looking at the seemingly obvious, right? I think they call that the Occam's razor, right? Is like it's always like the obvious answer. It's right there, right? But yeah, I mean, I think a lot. I think it would have definitely been worth looking into the husband. It always is. I mean, whether they're angels or not, I think you should look into that because those relationships tend to
'Cause
end up, if they go bad, violent. So
and how was he at work without his wallet?
I don't know.
What
I don't know
man
what he was at work without his wallet. He was there till midnight, which is a little odd and strange, but you
Yeah,
know, maybe he
okay,
was with,
well,
I'd say he was with Harriet, but Harriet died that day. So
Harriet didn't die, remember? Not that day. Did she die that day? Oh, that's right, she did
Harriet
die.
didn't
She
die on
died the
August
same
5th.
day. That's right. That's right. Okay, so
Mhm.
it's not Harriet's fault. Look at me, putting it back on Harriet.
It was like only like 3 months later that she died, too. So
Well, then again, on August 10th, 1918, Joseph Romano, I mean, he lived at his house that was that little grocery store I mentioned earlier in the house, and he lived with his 2 nieces, which, guys, is so sweet that 2 nieces are living with their older uncle. Because I
yes.
don't think that would be me. I'm just not that good of a person. Now, the nieces, Polly I'm not. I'm sorry. The
I'm
2
assuming he's
nieces.
not the creepy uncle, you know?
That's
He's
true.
not
Maybe he
the
was a nice
Orville
uncle.
Redenbacher.
Yeah,
Maybe.
maybe he was a nice uncle. But the nieces, Pauline and Mary Bruno, they were awakened by a commotion. See what happens with a hurricane?
Hurricane.
In an adjoining
Too soon.
room where their elderly uncle, Joseph lived. Now, the nieces found Romano with several serious blows to his head, and they reported seeing a dark-skinned, heavy-set man dressed in a dark suit and a slouched hat fleeing the scene. I wanna know
C
what a slouched hat
can I just
is.
say so, I probably this,
Oh, okay.
like, just bend it down. My thing about this is that it was dark. So, yes, the person was dark and they were in a dark suit. What like, it's just like,
Yeah,
this is yeah, how detailed was this, you know?
yeah,
Um, yeah.
and they didn't tell us their ages. For all we know, maybe they had been having a couple of sherries or something. Now, Joseph walked to the ambulance. So he was up and mobile and walked to the ambulance himself, but sadly he died 2 days later from the severe head trauma. Now, the living quarters had been ransacked, but once again, nothing was found to be missing. The back door was missing a panel, and a bloody axe was found in the backyard.
I I feel like it's at this point where you have to say, if all characteristics are similar, then it probably is the same guy, maybe. But then again, at that point, they were really just kinda letting people, like I mentioned earlier, walk all over the
Mhm.
scene, so who knows what copycats learned right off the bat. I mean, you find a chance to get away with something and you're like that, you're gonna go for it, especially if you know, "Hey, this person's made it this long, they do this
Mhm.
exact thing, I've seen it myself, it gave me the willies in a good way," and then, and and so they start doing it on their own, right? Um,
It's like
so
they went to school.
Right. Right. Yes. Right. Right. Every single crime scene is basically school. And that's one of the big
Right.
arguments about true crime is that you're just teaching people how to do it better. Which obviously we have shown not to be true with some of the stories we've covered in the past and other shows. So,
Yeah.
um, so along with this, you of course can only imagine the community panic. The Romano attack created panic in New Orleans as residents began to fear an attack from the Axeman. Now, police began to receive many reports that people had seen the killer lurking around, and some men reported finding axes in their backyards, which is really funny because he never brought them. He only used the ones that were already there. Citizens started openly carrying shotguns, taking shifts to watch their homes at night. Because I can think of nothing better than somebody in New Orleans late at night, super tired, with a shotgun sitting on their porch going, "I just dare you."
Oh, they're still doing that,
Um,
honey.
well, I didn't think it changed very much. I didn't have
It
much
hasn't
hope for that,
changed.
but it just scares me is really what it comes down to. Um, and and Lady in Gray does make a good point. As she did the research, cops told the reporters everything, who printed
Right.
everything. So, even if you weren't at the scene, you sure as hell learned about it. That's for damn sure. So they started openly carrying the shotguns. They also spread many rumors about the killer, including the killer often dressed as a woman, which I guess makes the people with shotguns neighborhood watch and gossip. I don't like it's like Gossip Girl with like an ammo belt, I guess, just all
Yeah.
in one. Um, so just to give you an example, just to give you kind of a little bit further, John D'Antonio, which is pretty Italian, um, a retired Italian detective, said publicly that it was possible that the man who had committed the most recent murders was the same one who had killed several people years earlier, like you had mentioned in 1911. He thought it was possible the killer had two personalities who killed without a motive. He didn't have a motive. He just, whatever was there was whatever happened, happened. And to that, I say, paging Dr. Dorothy Lewis. Dorothy Lewis, please come to the psycho wing. Doc, don't go. Just, I honestly though, that's pretty forward thinking for that time,
I
I
was gonna
think.
say, for that time, that was very forward thinking.
Right? It's very
Now,
possible. I mean, it is really possible. So,
I have to ask,
yes, I'm sorry, Captain.
Captain
Captain
just
said
said
rip
something.
Georgina.
What did I miss?
Michelle Trachtenberg died. She played
Oh,
Harriet the Spy. She was
yeah.
Georgina in Gossip Girl. Yeah, she had recently had a liver transplant, I believe, and I think that went south. I think that's what happened. I
How did
have
I
not
miss
confirmed
that?
that. Gene Hackman also died today too. So, as did his wife and one of their 3 dogs.
I saw that one.
It was said earlier in a conversation with some friends, we are living in the worst version of the 2025 timeline right now.
Yeah.
Y'all
Now,
don't go anywhere. Okay. Um, but yeah, so Dr. Dorothy Lewis, I'm gonna need you to come and investigate the axe murder. And by that I mean don't. Don't.
well, then again, on March 10th, 1919, Charles, Rosie, and Mary Cortimiglia, I guess is how you say that. Cortimiglia? I don't know.
Miglia?
Migli I don't know. So, Lorlando Jordan, who is the grocer across the street from the Cortimiglia family residence in Gretna, Louisiana, which is a New Orleans suburb. So it's a parish just right across the Mississippi River, but heard screams and ran over to investigate. Charlie, Rosie, and their daughter Mary had all been attacked. And guys, once again, nothing was taken from the home. A panel had been chiseled away from the back door, and the axe used was found on the back porch. I got lots to say about axes in a little bit, but Charles received a skull fracture from blows from the axe, but he returned home after 2 days in the hospital. Now, he was found dead on the floor later. Okay. But his 2-year-old daughter, Mary, died in her mother's arms from a blow to the back of her neck. Who hits a child, a little innocent child, with an axe? Huh? But Rosie, Charlie's wife, also suffered skull fractures from blows from the axe, but she remained hospital for a few days longer than her husband. And despite her injuries, she was found standing in the corner, clutching her deceased baby. Now, when she regained full consciousness, Rosie claimed that Giordano and his 18-year-old son, Frank, were her attackers. And we're just going to start and say this seems questionable. So many things. Orlando was 69 years old and was in poor health.
He
Okay.
he looks like he's about to send me stocks or real estate.
And then
Come here,
Frank,
sir. You know what? He looks like one of the old bankers from Mary Poppins. That's what he
he
looks like.
does. He does. Now, the son Frank was over 6 feet tall and weighed 200 pounds and was too large to fit through the door panels. And the door panels were so low you couldn't put your arm up in it to reach the locks to unlock it. Okay. Charles
He
denied
must
his
have had
wife's
one of those
claims.
little dinosaur grabbers that you just pull and it opens the jaws and he just, you know.
I'm going to just say they didn't have those in 1919, but I could be wrong. But
We both clicked on
Charles
the
did
same thing. That's how I know it was good. Captain said Teddy Roosevelt cosplay.
cosplay. Oh my gosh, you guys. Now, Charles had denied his wife's claims. He thought she was suffering trauma because her baby was killed, right? But once again, the police arrested the men. Okay. They were charged with murder and they were later convicted. Frank was sentenced to hang, and Lorlando was sentenced to life in prison. Now, Charles divorced his wife after the trial. I'm glad you did. Um, now, a year later, she recanted her false accusations, saying she accused them out of jealousy and spite. What was she jealous of? They came to rescue her. But the good news is both men were released from prison after being traumatized. But I personally think Rosie should have been charged with giving a false statement to the police. I mean, guys, I know she was a victim. I know that she lost her baby. But to say that two people committed that horrific of a crime, to me, is criminal.
100%. Like, you didn't have to go through all that. Just like passively aggressively destroy their garden or something. I mean, if he's gonna be Teddy Roosevelt, just take out his bear. It's just like, or moose or whatever the hell it was. Like,
I
you
mean,
have to be in it for the long game. You can't just go out and be like, they tried to murder me. And I'm so glad. I'm so glad that she recanted before Frank was hung,
oh,
because
absolutely.
that would have been, I would have
Yeah.
been so angry.
I mean, I don't know why she didn't just go get a voodoo doll or get a spell cast on them if she wanted to get them for some reason.
Right. Right. I don't understand. It will never make sense to me. But here we are. Here we are. Now in March, um, on the 13th in 1919, there was a letter that was written and sent by the infamous Axeman. And I'm going to read it to you and hopefully include some reasonable music beneath, if I can. Sure, we'll go with that. Why not? It is dated. Oh, it's, but we're all right, here we go. Hell, March 13th, 1919. Esteemed mortal, they have never got me, and they never will. They have never seen me, for I am invisible, even as the ether that surrounds your earth. I am not a human being, but a spirit and a demon from the hottest hell. I am what you Orleanians and your foolish police call the Axeman. When I see fit, I shall come and claim other victims. I alone know whom they shall be. I shall leave no clue except my bloody axe, besmeared with blood and brains of he whom I have sent below to keep me company. If you wish, you may tell the police to be careful not to rile me. Of course, I'm a reasonable spirit. I take no offense at the way they have conducted their investigations in the past. In fact, they have been so utterly stupid as to not only amuse me, but his satanic majesty, Francis Joseph, etc. But tell them to beware. Let them not try to discover what I am, for it were better that they were never born than to incur the wrath of the Axeman. I don't think there is any need of such a warning, for I feel sure the police will always dodge me, as they have in the past. They are wise and know how to keep away from all harm. Undoubtedly, you Orleanians think of me as a most horrible murderer, which I am. But I could be much worse if I wanted to. If I wished, I could pay a visit to your city every night. At will, I could slay thousands of your best citizens, for I am in close relationship with the angel of death. Now, to be exact, at 12:15 earthly time, on next Tuesday night, I am going to pass over New Orleans. In my infinite mercy, I am going to make a little proposition to you people. Here it is. I am very fond of jazz music, and I swear by all the devils in the nether regions that every person shall be spared, in whose home a jazz band is in full swing at the time. I have just mentioned, if everyone has a jazz band going, well then, so much the better for you people. One thing is certain, and that is that some of your people who do not jazz it out on that specific Tuesday night, if there be any, will get the axe. Well, as I am cold and crave this warmth of my native Tartarus, and it is about time I leave your earthly home. I will cease my discourse, hoping that thou will publish this, that it may go well with thee. I have been, am, and will be the worst spirit that ever existed, either in fact or realm of fantasy. The Axeman.
Okay. The music was great, but the Axeman did not write that letter. And I'm going to just say, after all my research, I'm going to think most people agreed with me, but what do you think?
I think Amy Beth has been a member for 6 months and she said jazz it out, so I'm going to read that out. I thought that was weird too. Jazz it out.
Yeah.
What do it reminds me of a story. It reminds me of something that I wrote when I was like a freshman or sophomore in high school when I was trying to be edgy. And I was like, I'm gonna write this as edgy as freaking possible with no thought of design, form, function, content. It's just gonna be edgy. And that's what it seems like. It just seems like a personal diary entry. I don't think that I'm not saying that the person who's the Axeman isn't intelligent, because they are. Um, because good God, the whole concept of not using your own weapon is fascinating. But this is it's pretty intelligent overall. I think it's somebody who just decided to make use of the scare.
I think it was somebody that owned a jazz club and they wanted to write this so that more people would come and play jazz music, or it was a new jazz artist and they wanted more people to like jazz. I'm going to say it was a marketing person who took advantage of an opportunity. Just my 2
I
cents.
agree. And here's my thing. And I think that it is very tasteless. There's no doubt about that. However, if I was in that era and that was happening and I was able to anonymously put a letter out there that would then cause people to then be part of my business or take part in my business or hire me, I can't say that I wouldn't do it, you know? So it makes sense. No, it is definitely not Chat GPT. And the reason for that, Angie, is because it didn't say this is a stark warning. Because everything Chat GPT thinks is stark. So yes. Yes, it's always big jazz. Big jazz, big
Well,
pharma, big government.
I I I also looked at it this way. Maybe it was also somebody who wanted to give people some assurance that nothing bad would happen on one night and that you could all sleep well. Because you know me, I like to look at the brighter side of things. Because I would have just played jazz
Until
music
August
and
10th,
gone to bed.
1919.
So, well, then in August of the same year, 1919, August 10th, Steve Boca woke during the night to find an axe wielding dark figure standing over him. Now, he said when he regained consciousness, Boca ran into the street to investigate the intrusion and discovered that his head had been cracked open. And he ran to his neighbor's house, Frankel Janissa, where he collapsed and lost conscious again. But nothing was taken from the home, and a panel was chiseled out of the back door. And Boca recovered from his injuries, but he never remembered any details from the attack. But guys, just a little bit later, September 2nd, 1919, William Carson, who was the local druggist. And when I say druggist, I mean pharmacist, not drug dealer on the street. Okay? Let me just clarify. Used to call them a druggist back in the day. Okay?
Yes. Yes.
For all of those people born much later. But he escaped the lethal Axeman. He fired several shots at an intruder had broken into his home, and the killer left a broken door and the axe behind.
Yeah, and then one day later, Sarah Lauman on September 3rd, 1919. She was 19 years old when she was attacked in her apartment during the night. The next day, neighbors came to check on the young woman because she lived alone and, well, they hadn't seen her. And at that point, we actually cared about our neighbors. They broke into the home when she didn't answer. Sarah was unconscious on her bed with a severe head injury and several missing teeth. The attacker had entered through an open window, thank goodness for modern day AC, and used a blunt object in the attack. A bloody axe was found on the front lawn of the building. Now, Lauman recovered from her injuries, but again, proves the fact that if you're going to attack somebody, go for the head because they couldn't remember any of the details of the attack. Um, uh, which is, I mean, at this point, it's just got to be infuriating. It's just like, you don't remember what? You still? And what I think that I didn't write this down, and this is purely conjecture, but I think whoever did the one on September 2nd was really pissed off that he failed. And then September 3rd came around and he said, ooh, that's more my type. And that's why
Mhm.
she not only had a head injury, but she also had missing teeth because I think he went too far. And I think he was frustrated and pissed off
Mhm.
and angry.
Agreed.
Um, and then over a month later, October 27th, Mike Pepitone. Mike Pepitone, well, it could be Pepitone, which sounds a lot more fun, but I'm going to say Pepitone for now. Um, Pepitone actually sounds like a music genre, like a subgenre of ska. Do you play Pepitone? Um, so Mike Pepitone was attacked in his bedroom. A woman claiming to be his wife, was awakened by a noise and arrived at his bedroom door just as a large man fled. Pepitone had been struck in the head and was covered in blood. The room was covered in blood spatter, including the painting of the Virgin Mary. Clutch your pearls, also covered in blood spatter as well. The woman, the mother of 6 children, was unable to describe any characteristics of the killer other than he was, quote, large. More will be said of this woman who claimed to be Pepitone's wife later. Mike Pepitone was the last of the alleged Axeman attacks.
Now, a lot of people, including me, don't think Mike was a victim of the Axeman, since it can't be verified that an axe was used in the killing. Um, and that poor woman, I'm going to just say poor woman, 6 kids back then. She was a mother of 6 kids back in that time and day. They didn't have epidurals.
No, I mean, I feel like having kids back then was basically like making a life choice. Like, I am willing to die 6 times to have 6 kids. If that does that make sense? Like, there
It
wasn't a
does.
lot of the modern medicine. There wasn't, I mean, you had to be willing to go out, having kids. Um,
Yeah. I
just a
think
huge, not that now it isn't, but yeah.
having kids back then makes me think of passing a kidney stone in today's time.
Mm,
And I would much rather
yes.
have kids. So now you laugh. You laugh, but I mean, it's true.
No, I've
But
had one. I don't equate it to having
yeah,
kids, but I empathize
yeah,
with you on it's
yeah,
terrible.
it's terrible. Now, the media, as the media in today's time, even back then, they went a little bit crazy, right? Because the majority of the victims were of Italian or suspected to be Italian heritage. And there was tons of speculation. Just look at the headlines. Was he a madman? Was he a robber? Was he a sadist? Or was he some supernatural entity? Now, the media sensationalized this idea. New Orleans had a lot of folklore accounts in Gumba Ya, okay, like the needle man who stabbed women until they were unconscious and then carried them off. The black bottle man who killed patients at hospitals and then gave the bodies to medical students. And Teri was raised thinking the Axeman was one of these folklores. So, how does that make you feel? Now, this theory was, they also said that he possibly was of a different world, a different being. And that theory was considered very possible because it was said that the Axeman was seen disappearing like he had wings. And I don't understand that statement,
It's
But
the Mothman
that's
cosplaying as Tim Taylor.
yeah, it just and then the media even suggested the mafia was involved, but there was no evidence of that. And while I say yes, that could be possible, I would think the mafia would bring their own weapon. They wouldn't leave it to chance.
Hey, everybody, it's BYOW. Bring your own weapon.
Yeah. Now, crime analysts think that the killings were sexually motivated by a sadistic killer who was targeting women, which I'm going to just
I don't.
say they were younger. They were back in the day. They didn't have the amount of information that we have in today's time to do analysis because they were off their rocker on that one. But that's just my
There,
opinion.
there. No, there's no evidence that says that these were sexually motivated at all. Even I mean, even without the modern medicine, you'd know at some point whether somebody was sexually abused to a degree. I think, autopsy wise, right?
Mhm.
And even though it was the early 1900s, I mean, it's pretty evident that it was not sexually motivated because he did indeed go after like just men too.
He
So
did.
I
And that's
honestly,
what's
I think he was just pissed at the rising prices of eggs.
yeah, it was pure conjecture. And as we know, no one has ever been apprehended. Now, like I mentioned earlier, many considered the theory that the Axemen attacked in an attempt to promote jazz music. Now, I don't think he did it to promote jazz music because he said he wouldn't attack, but he only said that one time. So it suggested that the letter allegedly written by the killer in which he said he would spare the lives of those who had a band playing jazz in their homes. I've already said that's just
I I would like this. I would like it to be known by everybody who's watching this now and in the replay crew. Thank you. That this is officially first record of the jazz over known to men. So the jazz over had happened. Is this sacrilegious? I don't think so. Passover didn't begin until April 14th that year because I looked it up. So this was the jazz over. Um,
okay.
so when in doubt, put the singing carp above your singing bass above your door, and you'll be fine. That's what that means. So
Like I said, I think a marketing person just took it upon themselves because on that night of March 19th, the dance halls were filled and the houses, hundreds of houses around the city had parties where they had professional and amateur jazz bands playing. So it was a little boost for the economy. There were no murders that night, like I said. So it was kind of a night that you could feel safe. But the interesting thing, the return address on the letter was simply hell.
mhm. it's it's so
Okay.
overdone. Like it had to be a club promoter who was also a theater kid. It just had to be.
Yeah, yeah. Now, it still remains a topic with many theories because here we are in 2025 still talking about it.
Right? That's my fault. Well, listen, so we're going to talk briefly, a little bit about the possible suspects because we think that that's really interesting. The first one was Joseph Mumfrey. He was crime writer Colin Wilson guesses the Axeman could have been Joseph Mumfrey. Mumfrey was shot to death in Los Angeles in December of 1920 by the widow of Mike Pepitone, the Axeman's last known victim. Wilson's theory has been widely reported in other true crime books and websites. And if we know one thing, we know all things. If it's written in a book and on a website, it's got to be true. But having that said, true crime writer Michael Newton searched public, police, and court records in New Orleans and Los Angeles, as well as newspaper archives, and did not find any evidence of a man named Joseph Mumfrey or similar name having been assaulted or killed in Los Angeles. So Newton also couldn't find any information that Mrs. Pepitone was arrested, tried, or convicted for such a crime or had ever been in California. Now, some sources named her as Esther Albano, while others simply referred to her as woman who claimed to be Pepitone's widow. Newton notes that Momfrey was not an unusual surname in New Orleans at the time of the murder, and there may have been an individual named Joseph Momfrey or Momfrey in New Orleans who had a criminal history. It could have been Munfrey or Monfrey, but the person may have been connected with organized crime if possible. Local records are not extensive enough to confirm any of that information at all. So Wilson's explanation is an urban legend, and there's really no more evidence now on the identity of the killer than there was at the time of the crimes. Now, in May 16th, 1912, we had mentioned the Chiambras. So those were two of the alleged early victims of the Axeman. Uh, I feel like we talked about this already, but this is that Mrs. Tony portion, right? So we had mentioned that Mrs. Tony was mentioned. This is it. So Mr. Chiambra survived. Mrs. Chiambra did not. She is considered to be the Mrs. Tony mentioned in the message on the asphalt outside the Maggio killings. Now, in newspaper accounts, the prime suspect for the Chiambra killings was referred to by the name of Mumfrey more than once. Now, while radically different from the Axeman's usual MO, if Joseph Mumfrey was indeed the Axeman, the Chiambras may have been the early victims of that future serial killer.
Okay.
From 1875 to 1921, Frank Doc Mumfrey, 1875 to 1921. According to the scholar Richard Warner, Doc Mumfrey is a chief suspect. Mumfrey used the alias Leon Joseph Monfrey or Manfrey. Mumfrey had a struggling jazz business in the Garden District, and many in the community noted his business was unusually good once the city was compelled by threat of violence to hire jazz bands and play jazz records. I, I think that might lend itself to him writing the letter, not necessarily the murders, but that's just me.
I think people don't like not having answers. I mean, who of us likes to not have answers? So I just think they decided to throw a lot of stuff up and see what would stick.
I agree. I mean, spaghetti at the wall, right? Which they should have done before they started arresting people too. So
That you would think. Now, I'm going to tell us about some unofficial suspects that are brought to us by Lady in Gray. So, this is from her brilliant mind. Andrew Maggio, who is the brother of Joseph Maggio, the Axeman's first attributed victim. He claimed to be intoxicated and couldn't hear the attack. Despite his alleged intoxication, he could hear moans through the wall after the attack. He lived in the same residence as the victims, which was attached to the grocery/bar. And then rather than run into his brother's bedroom at the sounds of moans, he ran to get his other brothers and didn't return for another 30 minutes. Well, I'm going to just say if you hear moans coming from a couple's bedroom, you don't automatically assume they're being killed. Okay? Just going to throw
no,
that out
look
there.
through the peephole. I mean, mind your business.
No, you don't look through the peephole. Boundaries. Now, Ed Snyder, could he have been attempting family annihilation? No forced entry noticed, nothing stolen. A bedside lamp appeared to be the weapon, not an axe. I I think somebody should have looked into him. Now, jilted
Yep.
jealous lover for Sarah Lauman. It was very unusual in 1919 for a single young woman to live alone. He could have been
Ooh.
invited in by her, then left through the open window. I mean, she could have been one of those flapper ladies. But
It was
I
my
was
great
waiting
grandmother
I
the
was
whole
waiting for
time.
that to
It was
hit
my
you.
great grandmother the whole time.
Yeah. Now, Miss Lady in Gray is not convinced that one person committed all of these crimes, and I am gonna go on record and say I 100% agree with Lady in Gray that not just one person committed these killings. I just don't think it's I just don't think it's the case.
Oh yeah, yeah. Um, I don't know. I mean, at that point, there was so much. I mean,
Yeah.
what? what she and we can say with the 100% confidence is that the Axeman it's not Danny Hurston, nor was the real Axeman as charming and smooth as the character on American Horror Story. You know, part of and I can tell you this for sure, he was not as smooth because he attacked at night and didn't lure anybody in. He went forward. So he's very, I would say that he's probably socially inhibited, to be honest with you. Um Part of the reason police had such a hard time catching the New Orleans Axeman was that witnesses to the murder rarely got a good glimpse of him. Some described him as dark-skinned, large, heavy-set, according to Legends of America. Now, given the vague profile, authorities were forced to cast a wide net for suspects, which is an appropriate pun for New Orleans. Now, Luke Seidel, head tour guide and tour manager for French Quarter Phantoms in New Orleans, told All That's Interesting, quote, once you start digging into the real details of the murders, the axe is ubiquitous, but that is about it. You're going to have different times, different ways people are getting into the house, whole families are being murdered. This is just an individual, different severities, etc. It is far less consistent than the legend actually makes it. Now, that is important because um, this really could have been a bunch of random crap that just happened. And I agree with Lady in Gray. A lot of people look dark skinned at night if they're not close at all.
Mhm.
Um, Investigators questioned dozens of possible culprits, including victims' neighbors and family members. And even some of the alleged victims themselves were suspected of being the Axeman of New Orleans, as the case of Louis Bessemer. Still, police never uncovered enough evidence to convict anyone of the murders. The Axeman remained at large. Now, despite intense investigations, the Axeman was not caught or even identified. His crime spree stopped mysteriously as it began. The killer's identity remains unknown to this day, leaving a ton of speculation as to his identity, motive, and ultimate fate, as can be seen by this now hour and 21-minute episode.
Well, there is one thing I can say, I think pretty factual. He is no longer alive. Unless
Yeah,
it's a being.
probably.
Just gonna say.
You know,
Now,
I do believe in.
you do believe so pop culture, of course, loves crazy stories like this. So in 1919, local tune writer Joseph John Davila wrote the song The Mysterious Axeman's Jazz. Don't Scare Me, Papa. Published by New Orleans based World's Music Publishing Company. And the cover depicted a family playing music with frightened looks on their faces. And I don't know if they were frightened because there was somebody with an axe or because the music was so bad, but they were looked frightened. Then in 1984, the Australian rock band Beast of Bourbon released an album called The Axeman Jazz. Then in
Mhm.
2014, Ray Celestine's, I think I'm saying that right, 2014 novel, The Axeman's Jazz, is a fictionalized version of the Axeman of New Orleans case. Okay. Now, my
Mhm.
favorite murderer, last podcast on the left, stuff you missed in history class, unsolved murders, and BuzzFeed Unsolved have all recorded episodes or multi-parters centered around this. And you can now include True Crime and Wine Time in that group there. Now, in 2020, the virtual reality game The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners
Mhm.
multiple references to the Axeman can be found. So as an example, a character referenced him in dialogue and a special axe can be found in a safe with the phrase the Axeman cometh on the side. Okay, that's just creepy. Now, in 2025, Axeman in New Orleans, a track from Stratford, an Ontario band Upside of Maybe's album Sinners and Saints is inspired by the true story of the Axeman for New Orleans and its impact on the city's music scene. Now, I'm going to just give you my closing thoughts on this. I don't think we're ever going to know for a fact whether this is fiction, fact. I don't think it was all one person. I think calling it the Axeman just made it more sensationalized, I guess. And I am just going to go on the record for everyone listening, watching later. Do not leave an axe by your back door. Under no circumstances would you leave a gun there for them to come in and shoot you with a gun. So why would you leave your axe out there? Okay. So I'm going to say some of the mafia stuff seems plausible, but I also think they would have just brought a gun and just done it a lot quicker. And I also think since voodoo was a thing, I don't know why someone didn't go get a voodoo doll, have a spell, and put a spell on all of the axes in the parish that they could do it, whatever, and that every time an axe is picked up and swung at a person, it should sing at the top of its axis.
So like that sword that sang in Roger Rabbit.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So
See,
that's what I
I'm
think.
there. I'm with it. I'm hip. In terms of final thoughts from me, he was a jazz loving lunatic with boundary issues. I mean, he was an unhinged lunatic with a flair for theatrics. He borrowed his victims' own weapons like some kind of murdery Goldilocks. Honestly, I don't think he cared about it. Like, what would that be like? Like, oh, this axe is too heavy. This axe is too light. This axe is just right. I don't think he cared about anything but jazz music. Just like he just wants a sick saxophone solo. I mean, he was a serial killer and a pretentious music snob at the same time. Just utterly insufferable. They never caught him, which means that somewhere out there, the Axeman just faded into history. Probably sitting in a rocking chair, shaking his fist at teenagers with their AirPods, grumbling, "Back in my day, we played real music, or else." Hard stop on the "or else."
He
So
couldn't still be
I don't
alive.
know. I mean, I want to know what, if we have a couple of minutes, we have like 3 minutes. I want to know what everybody who's watching, what do you guys think? What do you guys think about this? Do you guys have you heard about this case? Do you have any thoughts about who it might have been? Do you think they were all linked or were they just separate? Those are general questions, of course, and very open ended, but you know, um, I'm interested to hear what our folks have to think because I'm going to be honest with you. Anybody who watches our show, either now or as replay crew, they I feel like they are extremely intelligent, which makes me wonder why they listen to me on my side. Me, I'm not going to put you into that,
Well,
but
I
me.
appreciate
Um,
that.
yeah, but yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. You're right. You're right. Captain's right. Now jazz fans just talk you to death. It's not like it used to be. Um, but yeah.
Yeah, I think it could be a rabbit hole.
It
Um,
is. It is one big rabbit hole.
yeah. Um, well, I'm not gonna say thank you for taking me down that rabbit hole. Because I could have lived my whole life thinking it was just a photo. I didn't need to think that people were actually getting hit with axes.
Sorry. AP
It's
Amy,
okay.
thank you for being a member for 6 months. I appreciate it. Um,
Oh, thank
yeah,
you.
Lady and Grace says I think maybe one or two are related, but I don't think all of those that were done by the same person. I agree with you. I think there were some various motives, various weapons, various demographics of people, and they just weren't looking at that. They weren't considering victimology. They were considering
Well,
person dead, who the hell did it.
but
Not
you also
thinking
have to
about the
think
victim.
They were telling the newspaper everything, so if I wanted to get rid of somebody, why wouldn't I go and mimic it after that when you just gave me basically a plan on how to do it? So, that's why I think there's
Right?
multiple people. Do
Yeah,
you wanna
absolutely. Absolutely.
do you wanna tell people what we're covering next week? Because next week is dark and it's back in the news,
And it's big.
and it's
It might
big.
be one of the biggest cases that we have covered on this show, to be honest with you. I mean, I think we've covered some big ones, but not current big in that fashion. Um, so next week, March 6th, 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central, as we always are here on YouTube, we are going to be talking about the Menendez brothers and their case, the trial, the outcome, the whole kit and caboodle, because we know that that is coming up. And we've got some big things here on this channel for what is coming up for the Menendez
We can
brothers.
tell. Do you want me
You go ahead.
okay
I'll
to tell?
let you.
So, for those of you that, have been following us for a while, we had Scott Hoover on, who, was an author, The Hollywood Noir. He is also a reporter, covers trials and stuff there in LA. He is going to be live with us on the 20th and 21st of March after sitting in court watching the Menendez brothers trials. We will be on live both nights. If it goes both nights, if it does happen, Scott has confirmed he will be on with us and we'll confirm the time. We're going to try to do it at our normally scheduled time, but I am
Mhm.
very excited about that because that's kind of a big deal for us.
Yeah, this is a big deal. I love getting things straight from the folks that are in the courtroom
Mhm,
or were involved, and I think that this is a great opportunity for us, and I think it's a great opportunity for everybody to learn kind of a little bit
mhm,
about what's going on with this because we know it's not going to be filmed. So having somebody who was actually in the courtroom is huge, and I just
mhm.
want to say thanks to Scott for that. We really appreciate it.
Yeah,
Um, I know things like the axe murder and these things sometimes I pull them just out of thin air because I think that they're interesting. But we really want to cover cases that you think are interesting. So if you will please send case suggestions to Tara at tcwtmedia.com. That's TARA at tcwtmedia.com. Send them her way and we will fit them into our schedule. While we have cases picked out for a while, that doesn't mean we can't kind of replace and move things around. We're pretty flexible in that way. Um, so
I'm
please,
very
please, please
flexible.
send us those. She's very flexible. I was
Very
thinking more towards like scheduling, but that works too. I
I
like it.
yeah,
I like it.
and I'm also gonna say because our wonderful Tara's not with us tonight because it is Elbow Feet's birthday, and she decided that she wanted to go hang out with Elbow Feet instead of us. Can you believe that?
It's
But
okay. You've got a really cool present for elbow feet coming,
I
so it's fine.
do.
Um,
I can't
yeah.
wait for him to get Mr. B. But just wanted to say that, and I want to ask everybody to please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, become a member, just come back and join us, and don't forget, Midday Missing still happens every Monday and Wednesday, where we cover current missing person cases, and we have some really good interviews coming up with some family members. We just had one last week, or maybe it was Monday, I don't remember, but one of the most amazing
Monday.
moms that we've ever talked to. I mean, she was just amazing. Heather is a person I wanna just go sit and have drinks with and talk to her for everyone.
Fired.
Oh,
Llama said how
fired.
rude of her she should be fired. Do you know what's really funny? As soon as you said that, or a little earlier, I saw that Elbow Feet had popped up on my feed here, playing a game, and I was like, "Now wait just a second." I'm kidding.
Aren't they supposed to be, like,
AP Amy,
checking out elbows and feet or something?
listen, AP Amy did a wonderful job tonight. So everybody, shout out to Amy for the wonderful job that she did with the visuals, and everything else. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Um, we know that this is typically your role, but I do want to say, y'all. I know that you don't see the behind the scenes, and that's the point. You know, you're not supposed to, but the amount of work that Teri and Amy put into Midday Missing, please check it out, because they really, there are some people that will broadcast that they broadcast just the concept of missing people, helping people just to get views. Teri and Amy mean it. And the amount of work that they put into it is massive. And it is so important to get these stories out there. These folks that may, in any other case, might not be able to. And so please, please, please come back, for those shows to listen to them midday, because although they're heart wrenching and difficult, this is real information from real people who did real work in order to report on it. So please, please, please come back for Midday Missing.
Yeah, and I wish y'all could see my little gift I had for Elbow Feet a little better, my little kidney stone. But it's coming, Elbow Feet. It's coming. I even washed it. See how nice
It's
I
not the
am? And then
size, it's
it's
how
not the
you
size.
send it.
It's only 3 millimeters, but it's clean. I've cleaned it, and I will send. His
It
name
can't
is
be that
Mr.
expensive
B.
to send. It's not heavy.
Well, I don't know. It depends on how the post office is feeling because they're on crack lately.
Fair. They also
So
might be non-existent, so we'll see. Who knows? At this
yeah.
point. But
Well,
maybe we should sign off.
I was going to say, I just want to say, stay safe, everybody. Speak up if you see something. Don't worry about being wrong. Just speak up and enjoy your wine time. Or I have to tell you, this hurricane is pretty damn good. I'm going to say enjoy your hurricanes too.
Listen, thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. Take care of yourselves, your friends, your family, your community. Please don't. It's so easy to let it happen, but don't let anybody dull that sparkle, and shine on. Shine on, you crazy diamonds. We will see you next week as we cover the Menendez brothers here on True Crime and Wine Time Live. Until then, bye, everybody.
Put your axes up. Please go to bed, but put your axes up.
I don't have an axe. I've been told by many people. It's fine.
Bye, guys.
Bye.